If you're a local business owner, I'll bet you've gotten to the point where you've thought, man, I can't find anybody that wants to work anymore. Well, this episode is going to challenge that belief. My guest today is Connor Klassen, founder of Home Service Hiring, and he helps local business owners find and recruit everyone from general helpers to office managers to operational leaders. And what I find amazing about our conversation is that Connor doesn't believe that the biggest hiring problem is a lack of good people. He believes it's something else entirely. And the solution, it's not this secret formula. It's not this complicated set of things that you have to do. In fact, it's surprisingly simple. So if you're tired of sorting through applicants, wondering why hiring feels so difficult, and trying to figure out how can I build a team that's going to help me grow my business when every time I hire somebody, they turn around and quit, or they don't show up, or they end up being the wrong person, well, I think you're going to love this conversation. Let's get to it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locally Owned. One of the things that I've learned from owning a business for nearly 3 decades is that every business problem eventually emerges as a people problem. And the right people make everything easier, and the wrong people make everything harder. And today's guest learned that lesson early on. Connor Klassen grew up in his family's home service business, worked his way from washing windows and then eventually managing crews, built a company, and that company is dedicated to helping home service businesses find great employees. And we're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and the seasons of uncertainty, and how this one simple question that a client asked him sparked his entire business that he does today. And he's going to share what every business owner should know about attracting top talent in today's market. Connor, it's great to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. You grew up in your family's window cleaning business, correct?
That's right. My parents, they had a local window cleaning business in central Canada, so in a pretty small town. And so as a result, just because they ran the business, we ate, slept, and we breathed small business. That's what we talked about at dinner. That's what we talked about before I went to school. Every summer when summers went out, I was on the truck. And then I didn't realize it at the time, but that time in the small business was a building block of so many skills that I didn't realize that I was learning while I was on the truck and then moving into operations and pretty much every other role imaginable.
Yeah, you learned a lot because I think you said by age 17 you were actually managing crews. I mean, this is a
Yeah, that's
time when
right.
most guys at that age are thinking about sports or, girls or whatever, but you're actually managing crews for your parents' business.
Yeah, I started at the very lowest rung at like 6 years old, washing vehicles. And then over time, we moved into assisting on a truck. By the time I was 16 years old, I was leading crews. I was speaking to multimillionaires and taking care of multi-million dollar properties, which at the time, looking back, I probably had no business doing. But it was so incredibly valuable. And then once I moved into operations and training teams and working with teams on scripting for customer service and all of those skills and building blocks that I learned all translate into what I'm currently doing at home service hiring. Every single one.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And so you said something, and I put it in the opener, and I didn't really quite give you credit for it, but I'm giving you credit now. You said something along the lines is that you realized when you had a great team, that those were the best or the easiest years. And when you didn't have a great team, that's when things got really hard. Unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, so there was one year when we had 100% employee turnover. This was just due to a couple factors, but because it was a seasonal business, typically what happens is most of the crew gets laid off for winter. Some go back to school. Some go find different jobs. Some come back. But it just happened that one year we had everybody, for one reason or another, they left. And so that next year was a scramble. And we started from ground zero with the training. And that year was unbelievably tough. Everything had to restart. All the systems had to be reworked because we had never rebuilt from the ground up before. And so everybody that was in the office, everyone that was supposed to be working on the business, we all got forced into our number one priority is we train our team. And during that year, I realized that when our team is weak, or our team isn't trained properly, or our team doesn't have the right words to handle the situations of the day-to-day work, they don't have the right scripting to handle customer complaints or getting reviews, that is when the year is a nightmare. When our team is solid and we trust our people and they are confident in the systems for both the customer experience and the actual work, those years, well, they fly by so easy, they move quickly, the money just kind of happens. And I learned very early on during this experience that our teams are everything. Everything comes down to people. If we need more customers, it's who are the people that help us get more customers? If we need to scale up our operations, it's who are the people that are going to attract, recruit, and train all of our new people? Everything distills down into who are the people that I trust in order to help me enact vision that I have for my business.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that because people are an important leg of what that business stands on. In a lot of small businesses, the owner tends to be the one that started the business. They did everything. And so when they hire people, they don't know how to let go of control. They're just hiring people to help them do what they do. And even though they've got helpers and they've got people around them, they don't have people that are really equipped to help them grow the business. So when you are looking for people or when you have people, some of the things you just said, how do you determine? Is it just a gut feel like, oh, this is the guy that's going to help me build a business? Or have you come up with some way of measuring and evaluating people to say, this guy is the right fit for helping me grow this business?
Yeah, what you just described there, the solo operator or even the small business owner with a small team, and they have helpers, but they don't really have people that build anything for them. I call that the genius with 1,000 hats. And it's an unfortunate position that every business has to go through. Everybody has to eventually graduate from that. But it's where the founder knows everything, and then they just pass off tiny little pieces to their people, but everything comes back to them because they're still the brain of the operation. And for a while, for really small businesses, that works. But once you try to break through that limit where you start needing other people to train your team and you start needing other people to help you build out systems in different areas of your business, it starts to fall apart. As far as finding people, I really hate to say it, but there isn't a secret sauce. I really wish that hiring was super complicated and it was some kind of secret that I knew that I couldn't possibly share with everybody. I wish I had my 11 herbs and spices of recruiting. But recruiting, it's a volume game. I know that probably sounds reductive, and it is, but at its core, it's about doing more. More people need to know about your business. More people need to know that you're hiring. You need to find a way to get more people to raise their hand and say, I am interested in your business. Tell me more. When that happens, we generate a list that is dozens or hundreds of people long. What that does is it shifts us in from desperation mode into selection mode. We no longer just pick somebody just because they have a heartbeat and they can fog up a mirror. Then when we have a large list, we got to get rid of 99% of people and only bring in the 1%. And I would say that is the biggest leverage, the biggest lever that founders and owners can pull. It's shifting the supply demand of people that want to work for them in their favor. Because recruiting is be picky, be picky.
Yeah, yeah, no. And that's something that I realized is that when you have options, um, you make better decisions. And I've experienced enough hiring to know you're right. It is about volume. It takes a lot of candidates to find someone that you feel like would be a really good fit for your company. And and so to to do that and to do that where you've got options where, is difficult for a business owner because they're busy every day putting out fires. And so typically, as soon as they find one that they think would be good, they jump on hiring that person, hoping that it's going to work out. Um, and it sounds like what you're saying is that you've got to find 100, or not 100. You got to go through 100 to find 5 or 10, and then narrow those 5 or 10 down to one, where you've got a lot of good choices, and you're not putting your hope in just this one person. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
I want to pause here for just a moment because I think there's a really important insight buried in what Connor just said. A lot of business owners have convinced themselves that there simply aren't good people out there anymore. And if that's true, then the only option is to just lower your standards and settle for whoever applies. But that's not what Connor's saying. He's not saying stop looking for the people that are qualified, the people that are a good fit. He's saying that highly qualified people are rare by definition, and that the answer isn't lowering your standards. The answer is increasing the number of people you evaluate. Think about it this way. If you interview 10 people and none of them are a great fit, well, then it's easy to conclude that, man, there's just nobody good out there. But if you interview 100 people and you find 5 exceptional people, well, then suddenly you're like, okay, there's good people out here. Now, I know that can sound overwhelming, 100 people, and most business owners don't even have the time to interview 10, let alone sort through hundreds of applicants. So while it's overwhelming, to me, it provides a little bit of relief because it means the problem isn't that good people don't exist. The problem is that most of us aren't seeing enough people to find them. Good people are out there. The challenge is creating a process that allows you to find them instead of hoping that they walk through the door.
Yeah, with home service hiring, my recruiting business, entrepreneurs and home service businesses, they come to me not to find them the one person for their role. They come to me so that my team helps them find hundreds of people, and then we eliminate 90% of them. We pass the rest of them over to them. And whether your audience here works with a recruiter or not, that truth still rings true. It's just they need to be eliminating 90 to 95% of their applicants before seriously considering them to bring them into the company. Because when you do that, you make better decisions, right? The sales rep with the full calendar, he closes better than the sales rep with only a couple appointments. I don't know why that is, but that is the case.
Yeah. Now, if you didn't exist but you knew all this knowledge, about hiring people, what would you tell a business owner? Like, how would they go about gathering enough clients to narrow it down to 10. Because like I said, the scenario of them finding people and then coming across that first one that seems like, oh, this guy might be, he would work or she would be a good fit, they jump on it. Or at least maybe they jump on the first three and then that's it. So if you didn't exist, what would you tell someone to do to try to find these clients or not clients, candidates?
The very first thing that I would say is be crystal clear on who you want to attract. If we don't know exactly who we're looking for, I promise you, we are going to find somebody else. That has to be step number one. Sit down with yourself, with your team, people that you trust. Ask yourself, what does this person look like? How do they speak? How do they behave? What kind of pre-existing experiences do I want them to have before they come to me? What kind of pre-existing experiences do I not want them to have before they come to me? If we're very, very clear on the archetype of who we want to attract, it makes everything else easier. The next thing that I would say is that hiring is sales. It is selling. The only difference between sales for employees and sales for customers, the only difference is what we're selling, right? In regular sales, we're selling products and services. With hiring type of sales, we're selling opportunity. We're selling your job opportunity. So just like sales, if we want to get more customers, we advertise more, we tell more people about our stuff. Basic fundamentals. If we want to get more applicants for our jobs, we advertise more, we tell more people about our open jobs. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. The traditional way is you go on Indeed, right? You make a post-it, you get some people to raise your hand. I'm not against Indeed at all. Indeed is a powerful tool. But I think an even more powerful tool that a lot of people overlook for hiring is social media. I actually learned about this from one of my clients. He said, we're running social media ads to get customers and it's working well. Can we run social media ads to get employees? And when he first said that to me, I thought that was so ridiculous. I said, I don't think that's going to work, but I'm willing to try it. And I'm so happy that I was wrong on that one, because that one question that client asked me, it was the building block for everything that we do today. What we did is we started posting on social media for his open jobs. He lives in a small town. It's a town about maybe $30,000 or 30,000 people within 15 miles. And of those 35,000 people, we got about 500 applicants, 500 people.
Wow.
And that shifted things, because he went from being in a position where he was just hiring somebody just because they could breathe. And then when he got 500 applicants, I think of that list, he only hired 8 people. But still, it allowed him to eliminate 492 people.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what makes, when you approach hiring like it's sales, it shifts the way that you approach it, and it allows you to make better decisions because you're not approaching it like a traditional hiring process.
Yeah, that is great. Attracting people is so difficult. I mean, this is one of the things that for small business owners, it seems to be the code that nobody can seem to crack, is how to find good people. That's been the complaint for generations. Every generation seems to think that they're the group that now has a hard time finding people, but everybody has. It's always been difficult. If he got 500 applicants, that is crazy. That's amazing. So that can be duplicated. Obviously, if that can happen in a small town, that can happen anywhere. But before we dig into that, you mentioned sales, and I think there's something that happened in your career that has shaped the way you think about sales. Well, I'll let you tell the story, but it's about your first sales. You had success, and then you hit a dry spell. So I'd love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about that story.
Yeah, but before I started recruiting for service businesses, I had pretty much every single role imaginable in my parents' small service business, from technician to operator and sales rep as well. And so they had a small branch of their business, a small division that was dedicated to a very specific type of insect control. It wasn't just regular pest control. It was spraying the sides of houses so that spiders would not nest and make webs and make it look like Halloween threw up on the side of your house. And it's a very niche service, and it's a rather expensive service compared to a lot of other pest control. Anyways, when I was first getting into sales, I went on my first sales call for this service, and I closed it. It was easy. It was a lay down sale. My first sale ever. I am riding high. I'm thinking this is amazing. Sales is easy, and I am the best. Second deal, I go there. The price is even higher. Close it again. Again, the high hits me. The best sales rep ever. Then what happened is I proceeded to go 0 for 17 on my next 17 sales calls. 0
Wow.
for 17. Ask for the sale. No. Ask for the sale. No. And oh, my ego and my hubris, it got smashed like a cheap pot. I went from thinking I am a closer of closers and everyone should revere me to thinking I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I even trying at all? And it's something that I learned from that. I learned that number one, learning to sell is the most valuable thing that I've learned because it's just clear communication. I looking back, that hard experience in sales of just 17 no's back to back to back, that completely eliminated my fear to ask for things. Like the only reason that my business is where it is because you learn to ask. You learn to get a no. You learn to get 17 no's.
Mm.
Because what I don't think I told you in our first little conversation that we had was that was my first sales experience. My second sales experience was when home service hiring was starting, and I was figuring out how do I communicate the value that we can bring to service businesses. And in the beginning, I went 0 for 30, 0 for 30 sales calls. Just presentation, pitch, no. Presentation, pitch, no. And during that time, you learn a lot from 30 sales calls. You learn a lot
Hmm.
from 30 conversations. I got to
Yeah.
figure out, I got to figure out all of the troubles that my dream clients were having. I got to figure out what are the actual problems and what is the benefit that you solve this problem, right? Because it's not you just bringing on another technician. Nobody wants to just bring on another technician. What they want is, I want to bring on somebody that's going to take as good of care of my customers as I do. Then when that happens, I can step back and I can direct my time to other parts of the business.
Right.
I never, I never would have known that without getting punched in the face with 30 no's.
From where you started, including the 17 no's, and then 0 for 30 in your own business, um, what's the biggest lesson you learned from all that?
That's a good question. The biggest lesson I learned that has transferred into recruiting and then sales as well is that I need to understand my prospect, and I need to understand the applicants that we're interviewing for my clients deeply. If we don't understand exactly what their motivation is, we're just guessing. And you can throw stuff on a wall, like you can throw stuff at a wall, but eventually it just looks like a Jackson Pollock. Like it's a mess. If we're just guessing, we might get right occasionally, but we're gonna miss most of the time. And during those 17 no's and then later the 30 no's, it's just it's understanding the deep desires of both applicants and prospects. When I'm working with customers, their desires are they want somebody that's going to help them enact their systems so that they can free up time to work on other places, business, or even just have a little bit less stress in their day-to-day life. When we're talking about applicants and we're interviewing applicants, it's very important to realize that the interview process goes two ways. Just like we're trying to sniff out all of the BS that an applicant might have, they're sniffing you too. They're trying to figure out, is this business actually somebody that I want to stake my life, career, and the next couple of years with?
Right.
And if we're not understanding our applicants, then we're making the same mistake that I made in my first 17 sales calls.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I understand that because I felt that shift. I did a lot of interviewing with my previous company, and I felt that shift where, because it's not a dance that's happening the whole time. It's more like when you're interviewing somebody, they're coming in selling you on them. Like when somebody's applying for the position that you have open and they come in for an interview, their their mindset is, I want this person to hire me. I need to tell them all things about me and sell them on me. And when you find that candidate that is really who you're looking for, or at least who you think you're looking for during the interview, it shifts. Now you start selling them on who you are as a company and what you have to offer them, and hope that that's what they're looking for, or what would make them go, okay, I want to, I applied for this job. Now I'm sure, you're trying to sell them on why they should take it. So,
Exactly. And can I tell you a really uncomfortable truth?
sure.
Okay. I learned this by working with one of the most wonderful people that I've really ever had the pleasure to meet and work with. I learned that your reputation follows miles ahead of you. And this is the same for sales and marketing and reviews, but it is more true with recruiting. It is, if your local reputation is that you don't take care of customers, or that you don't take care of your people, or even if the local area just perceives the business as not particularly put together, those businesses are a lot harder to find talent for. Now, I learned this when I was working with a business that they are just polished. Their team is solid, and the owner is genuinely one of the nicest humans I have ever met. And then when we get on interview calls for this client, people go, "Oh yeah, I know about them. Oh yeah, he's the man. He's great." And that business, it's a dream. It's a dream to find people for him, because his reputation carries out miles in front of him. People already know of the business, and then it's just a matter of finding the people who are a good fit. The selling applicants on his company has already been pre-done. And I think that's what a lot of service businesses, they overlook. They think that there's some trick or tactic, and there are. But the biggest thing is it's your reputation, and it's the way that you show up for your people that is going to make or break your ability to find people. And I'm not talking money here. I'm not talking that you pay your people more than all of your other competition. And it's great if you can. That's wonderful. But it's how you treat your people. That translates to applicants. It's the way that you show up for your team when things really suck. It's your team that's going to sell your next member. It's your team that's going to sell your next team member, your next A player on joining you, as opposed to everybody else. Because truly good people have loads of options. The question is, why you? Why your business?
As I listened to Connor talk about reputation, I realized that this really traces all the way back to those 17 no's and the 30 no's that he mentioned earlier. Most people hear a story like that and think, oh, the lesson is persistence. And persistence certainly does matter. But I think there's something a little deeper going on, because he didn't just keep doing the same thing over and over again until finally somebody said yes. He learned from each experience. He learned to stop focusing on what he wanted and focus on what the other person wanted. What did that prospect actually care about? What was the applicant really looking for? What mattered most to the employee? He learned that trust isn't built by convincing people you're great at what you do. Trust is built when people feel like you understand what they need. And when enough people feel understood, then that's when the reputation happens, right? Customers start talking, employees start talking, applicants start talking. A lot of business owners mistake reputation for brand and treat it like something they can market. But listening to Connor, it sounds more like reputation is what happens when you spend years understanding what matters most to other people and consistently showing up for them in that way.
When a business owner is trying to interview an applicant, they know that they're likely to be a good fit, and then it just comes down to, is the applicant going to choose the business owner? What's kind of interesting is that the business owner can present that they're this wonderful place and that the team loves them and that things are put together, and that when things aren't put together, they figure things out. And maybe the applicant will buy it. But on a long enough time horizon, it becomes harder and harder to present over a long period of time. You can put up a facade for a little bit, then maybe in a couple of days you can put up that facade again, but it breaks down eventually, and people eventually learn the truth. And that kind of rule of like how you can put up a facade for a while, that exactly translates into recruiting as well. Because applicants as well, I hate to say it, but applicants are incentivized to lie. They're incentivized to present themselves in just the brightest light and negate all of their shadows.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes very hard to do that over a long enough period of time. It's very easy to do that once at one in-person meeting or on the phone call, right? It's very easy to present that you have no problems or no skeletons in the closet. And this happens all the time, where a service business owner will hire someone, they think they're great, and then 6 weeks later they find out, oh, maybe they're not exactly who I thought they were. So I actually have a rule for that. I have a rule that when I'm working with my clients, I try to share this rule with them. And that is, it's a rule to weed out people who are maybe lying is not a good word. They're trying to present all the good parts about them and negate all the bad parts. The rule is multiple people, multiple channels, multiple days. And what I mean by that is, when we're interviewing an applicant, we're going to interview them not just once. We're going to interview them over the course of multiple different days. So maybe that's a Monday, Wednesday, and next week Wednesday. At least 3 times. Even more if it's a higher skilled role. We're going to do these interviews with multiple people. So once it can be the owner, once it could be maybe an operator or a manager, someone that he trusts, a couple a couple months ago, I was working with a carpet cleaner. I told him, you shouldn't even be in this interview. Get your team to interview him. Get your team to take him to your shop. You just step back. Once that interview is done, go talk to your team. Say, did you like this guy? What didn't you like about this guy? The third rule, multiple channels. Reach out to your applicants in multiple different ways. So email, texting, on the phone. Some people I work with like Zoom. I'm not a big fan of Zoom, whatever. In person with your team, right? We're reaching out to them over multiple days, in multiple different ways, with multiple different people. And when we do that, we kind of weed out the people who put on masks for the first couple different interviews. And we got to weed them out and find out more of the truth as we have multiple channels, multiple days, multiple people.
I love that. I mean, that's, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of if you're trying to purify something, you're putting the heat to it, and it will help purify things, if you're putting things in the fire, say gold or whatever, but you're doing that multiple times in multiple different ways, and it's refining it more and more and more. And I love that. And I can tell you right now, the owner of a business, most business owners don't have the time to do that. I mean, that is a great suggestion, but that's really difficult to do. But it's as I'm listening to you talk, I'm going, well, but it has to be done, because you're right. That's the way you really can figure out who this person is. And like you said, it might take 6 weeks and then you find out who this person is. But that process that you're doing, you're finding that out on the front end. And that's before you hire them. And that is so important. And you just can't skip it. Because I never did anything that extensive, but I've done some of that. And so that's how I know that this is what you're saying is truly valuable. I mean, everybody knows when somebody's coming in for an interview, they're already rehearsed what they're going to say. They know, they have an idea of the questions that they're going to be asked, and they know how they're going to answer them. So that interview almost doesn't count, So I've learned to, before I've even done anything with that candidate, I would call them from my cell phone and how and just, I just wanted to see how they answer the phone. And, they're completely unprepared to have a conversation with me. And I'm just going to have a few basic questions that I'm going to ask them. Hey, I just want to make sure, you got a valid driver's license. Do you have reliable transportation? Or just ask them some basic questions. But it's not even the answers to those questions. I'm just seeing how they think on their feet, how they, can respond to somebody that's unrehearsed. That told me a lot more. So, so I realized that's incredibly valuable. But what you're saying, putting them through that process is, you're going to get to that 6 weeks before you ever even hire them, and know that, okay, this person is worth hiring. If I heard you right, that's basically what you were saying, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. We want to kind of condense the touch points that we have with our applicants so that we can weed out more of the red flags before we bring them on. Because I'd much rather find a red flag before an offer letter is signed rather than after. Because once after, you've already paid this person for some amount of time, and then they quit or they leave or they have to get fired, and then you're just back at square one. It's better to wait just a little bit more, do a little bit more due diligence, and then make fewer mistakes. But I absolutely love your gold analogy that you had. You mentioned when you're refining gold and you heat it up and you kind of scoop off the slag and you scoop off the bad parts to get it, and you're effectively weeding out applicants, if that's what our analogy is. But as someone, I just got engaged recently, and so I learned this about gold. Gold is even like 14 karat gold, which is relatively pure gold. it's still only 14 parts gold. 14 out of 24 parts gold. So there's still 10 parts of something else. And that's the case with a lot of people. Like, people can be really great, but there still might be 10 parts of something else. Right? They
Hmm.
might be 14 parts gold, but there might be 10 parts of something else. And that's just the case of people, because people are each unique. They're each all a little bit unpredictable. And so uh, when recruiting is happening, the question is what are those 10 parts made of? Are they slag and iron and rock, or is it silver?
Yeah, that's a great question, or a great way of looking at it. Um, Before I forget, you had mentioned something that I want you to unpack this for me a little bit, because um, you said the darkest time wasn't a challenge, it was actually the absence of one. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that, because boredom is you know, is our kryptonite in a way. So unpack that for me a little bit of how you realize that, how you got to that point of realizing that you need a challenge, and how you thrive in that.
Yeah, this pulls us back years ago. This was back quite a few years ago, back when I was still in the truck. I realized at that time that I was capable of more. I just didn't know what that more looked like. And it got to the point where the day-to-day operations as an operations manager, it was just easy. And there just wasn't any real challenge to it. And I knew that I was capable of building something that that would affect more people than just me. And as I look back on it, maybe I wasn't honoring the opportunity that I had while I was working on the truck. Like, there was a lot of different places that I still could be useful to people. And looking back, now that I have more context, I realized that my desire for more was starting to maybe create a little bit of bitterness that shouldn't have been there, because my time on the truck was the first step building blocks for every other entrepreneurial venture that I've gone into since. But back then I didn't have that context, and I could feel myself starting to get bitter because I knew that I needed to start a business. I had that deep in me that was my one and only desire at the time. But I didn't know what, because I didn't really, at the time, I didn't have enough skills to transfer into starting a whole business from the ground up, right? Because starting a business, it is operations, it's sales, it's marketing, it's admin, it's finance. I'm sure I'm forgetting something else. At the time, I was just operations and customer service. That was, you're missing a lot of building blocks.
Right.
And so that was by far the darkest time of my life, because I just felt like I was in this endless purgatory of just, I know I need to do more, but what is the more? And around that time, I saw a video that stuck with me. It was it was a guy talking about patience, and he said, patience is not waiting. It's figuring out what you do in the meantime. And I realized I don't need to figure out exactly what I need to do. I just need to figure out what to do while I wait for that opportunity. And so I went and I looked into what are things that I can do that I don't think are going to be my long-term business, but what are some things that I can do that are going to get me one step closer, or at very least keep me busy until I figure out what is that next step. And so because I wanted a real challenge, I actually went to one of my business mentors at the time and I asked him to issue me a challenge. And the challenge that he issued me was go to any local business, offer to get them 5 customers for free. When he said that, I immediately felt a cold sweat take over my whole body. And I realized, like that first wave of dread where you have to shift from just thinking about doing stuff to actually doing stuff.
Right.
That hit me. That hit me right there. And so what I decided to do is I decided I was going to learn something entirely new. So I went to a local martial arts gym. I have never fought in my life. I have never done martial arts. I don't particularly care for martial arts. But I went to this gym. I got a membership. I went and gave the business owner money just so I could have some amount of proximity with him. And then I told him, my business mentor has issued me a challenge to get a local business 5 customers for free. Could I do that for you? And I mean, what was I at the time? 17, 18, something like that. And I was shocked when he said yes, but he said yes. And so then I had to figure out, okay, shoot, now there's a lot of other stepping stones that I don't have no idea what to do.
This guy I don't mean to interrupt, but this guy must have thought you were from another planet. I mean, nobody says, can I get you customers for free? And nobody at 17 has a business mentor, so that's got to be like, he probably thought, who is this kid that's in here?
No, it was definitely a weird conversation, especially because I remember exactly where it was. It was in like the getting ready room before going out onto the mats. And there's just this dude's got cauliflower ear. This dude's unbelievably sweaty. This guy, he's bleeding a little bit. And then there's me I was 140 pounds at the time, tiny, and this professional fighter. And it's just a lesson that you don't get anything if you don't ask. And baffled, he said yes. When he said yes, I realized there's a lot of things that I don't know. I don't know how to close, but before that, I don't know how to get people to show up at this gym. Before that, I don't know how to generate leads. And so I went and researched, okay, how do I run very basic Facebook ad to just names and emails and phone numbers? Okay. Figured that part out. I didn't realize at the time that basic skill was going to translate to my recruiting services that we're doing today. But I didn't realize that. Then what happened was I had to text all of these leads. So we were generating dozens of leads a day. We were texting all of them. I didn't realize at the time that is the same scale as the first step, interviewing applicants. Then after that, it's getting them to show up, which is reminding calls, texts, emails. And then after that, it's actually closing them into the deal. And so we started off really rough. We were closing 1 out of 10 leads. So still pretty good. We were getting $7 leads. We were closing 1 out of 10. It cost us $70 to sell a $420 package. That's not a bad return on investment on day one.
Right.
And over time, I got better. And pretty soon we were closing 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 leads, and we were getting, again, $7 leads. So now all of a sudden we're paying $40 to collect $400. And that's when this started to make money. And so after I got those 5 customers for him, keep in mind, I'm out of cash for all of the ad money so far. I went to him and I said, so far, I've made you about $2,000. Would you like to keep going? He said yes. And so after that, for the next couple weeks, I closed about 20 deals, which is still peanuts. But I realized that that was the base skill set that I applied to pretty much everything else after that. Just simply because of that one challenge that my business mentor gave me. I was then able to go and say to, are you familiar with Super Tech University?
Yeah, yeah, Larry and
Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah. I went to them and I said, I want to start a business one day. I still don't know what it's going to be. Here's a skill set, a digital marketing skill set that I learned. Can I come and hang out with you guys and work for you guys for free so that you can benefit from this and I can learn from you guys? Shocking. They said yes again. And so that one skill set of selling martial arts gyms, which makes no sense compared to whatever I'm doing in the future, I rolled that into the ability to work with people that I actually wanted to work with. And while I was working with Super Tech University, I was able to meet a lot of their clients, and that was actually the start of home service hiring as
Oh,
it
okay.
starts today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that martial arts experience, um, you offered to do it for free, but in a sense, that was your tuition. You got free tuition as well on learning how to do what you do, and that's who can put a price on that, really, you know?
Yeah. That one experience, if I look back, I would say that's whatever the $500 in ad spend that I spent on that little experiment has been worth hundreds of thousands, and it's probably going to be worth millions to me by the time I'm done.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you not only said, "Hey, I can do this for you for free," but you spent your own money on ads for him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You really showed up for that. That's pretty amazing.
And
Wish.
there is nothing scarier than than starting ads for a business that you don't really know when you don't really have any real money behind it and you're running it on a credit card.
Oh my.
That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. That took a lot of guts and a lot of courage. Um, and you put yourself out there, which is really uncomfortable. And just I've seen over and over again where that is probably the thing that wins the day more often for business owners. Is it's not having a great plan, it's not having great skills or all this experience or great backing. It's having courage. Courage shows up so much more to help you win than almost anything else. And we can all have it. It's free. It's just being willing to be uncomfortable. I love this story because there's such a great lesson that has everything to do with entrepreneurship. And what I love about it is that Connor didn't wait until he felt ready. He didn't wait until he knew how to run Facebook ads, or he understood lead generation, or till he had this perfect plan. His mentor gave him a challenge, and instead of making excuses, he accepted it. He was scared. He knew he didn't really know what he was doing. He knew there was a good chance that he could fail, but he stepped forward anyway. And what I find amazing is that he wasn't even building his own business yet. He was simply trying to solve the problem that was right in front of him. Yet in the process, he learned these skills that would eventually become the foundation of the business that he owns and runs today. And I think that's how growth really works. We spend so much time trying to figure out the whole path that we never take the first step. But rarely does the entire path reveal itself up front anyway. Connor didn't become an expert first and then take action. He took action, became knowledgeable, and he learned only what he needed to learn to accomplish the goal in front of him. And I think that's the challenge for all of us. When our business is asking us to grow, we're always going to be uncomfortable. We're always going to feel a little bit afraid. and we're going to make excuses. Maybe the question we ask ourselves shouldn't be, am I ready? Maybe the question we should ask ourselves is, what's the next thing I need to learn? Because the skills, the confidence, and sometimes even the business itself are often found on the other side of taking that first really uncomfortable step. I'm going to ask you a question about how you do things, and you'd mentioned Indeed, and a lot of people rely on things like Indeed to try to find employees. What makes home service hiring so much different and such a better experience? I mean, I used Indeed, and I know I could answer some of these questions, but I want you to tell our listeners. I'd used Indeed, and the platform itself is very well organized. It's very well built for a lot of things, but the one main problem that I found is that it was very difficult to find technicians, to find the people that I needed on Indeed. And I'm not the only one that has that experience. So tell me, what if somebody's going to spend the money on Indeed or spend the money with you, what the big difference is in using your service as opposed to trying to use Indeed to find somebody?
Yeah, so Indeed, I'm not anti-Indeed. I think it's a good tool, and there's a good reason why they're a multi-$100 million company. Um, but what I noticed is that Indeed tends to attract a certain type of person. They're the person who's actively looking for work. And what I also noticed is that the people that we actually want, like the people that are actually going to drive the business forward, it's very rare that they're actively looking for work. More often than not, they're doing well where they currently are. Maybe they could be tempted away to a different opportunity, or maybe they were like me at the time, who was looking for something new, right? Some new opportunity where they could stretch their skill set. And so those people, they don't spend Friday evenings scrolling Indeed. That doesn't sound like a good time to me. However, what they do, where they are and what they are doing is they're on social media. They're on Facebook and Instagram. With home service hiring, that's the first place that we start. We start with targeting the local area with Facebook and Instagram ads that are designed specifically for the roles that our clients are trying to fill and for the business itself, right? They're customized ads for that business. What that allows us to do is it allows us to reach tens of thousands of people. Indeed typically reaches maybe a couple hundred people, but we're reaching tens of thousands. And what that allows us to do is it just allows us to generate so many applicants so fast. That's the first part. I call that the employee attracting system. It's the engine. It's the engine that makes everything else work. Because if we don't have applicants, we don't need to do anything else, because we just need we need to get more applicants. Once we solve the problem of we need more applicants and we're getting dozens or even hundreds of them, the employee attracting system, it accidentally creates problem number 2, which is we have too many applicants. But when we generate those kind of applicants, the next thing that my team does is we weed through applicants on behalf of our client. So we do that multiple channels, multiple days, multiple people thing that I mentioned earlier. We do that for our clients. We reach out to them with email, with texting. We reach out to them on the phone. We screen resumes. We make sure that they have the valid licensing that would be required for that role, whether that's just a driver's license or something a little bit more technical. After that, what we do is we try to get rid of as many as reasonable, but no more. So we try to get rid of all the people that we think are not a good fit for this role. And we send the top 5 or maybe 10% people, we create a report saying, here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like, here's some other notes, here are the things that maybe aren't red flags, but you absolutely need to know. Those sorts of things. We send that to our client, And then that way they are well informed going into their interview. And we just ask, sit down with this person, with your team, have an in-person interview. Because we can get them 85% of the way there. We can generate the applicants. We can get rid of most of them. We can send them the people that we like. But at the end of the day, it still is going to be the decision that they need to ask themselves, which is, do they want this person to represent their business and carry their reputation? And so that's a question that we can't answer, but we can get them really close.
You're taking so much of the legwork out of it, which is what, from my experience, that's what burns people out from hiring good people. And it takes up so much time. You almost know you're not going to hardly be able to get much else done during this period when you're trying to find somebody. So being able to eliminate so much of that for business owners is so valuable. And I'm sure you know that because that's what you discovered by doing the things that you did. One of the things that business owners, as far as hiring people goes, this fear that they have of, okay, if I do hire this person and they do work out, there is always the chance that they're going to move on. They're going to find something, they could find somebody else could pull them away. Their spouse could get a job in another part of the country and they have to move. A life situation can happen where that takes them away. A few weeks into it, they've made this investment and now that person's gone. How often does that happen? And when that happens, what's their recourse from there?
Yeah. Yeah, the first 30 to 45 days, those are the roughest times, right? There's a lot of change that happens all super fast. And so the reality is that not every person is an immediate fit, right? So sometimes people decide, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Sometimes owners decide, oh, you weren't who I thought you were. And that's just the nature of dealing with people. It happens. We try to do all the due diligence beforehand to make sure that we have it happen as little as possible. But when it does happen, the important thing is that number one, don't blame the applicant, blame the process that you had. Right. So if you're working with home service hiring and someone leaves for whatever reason, blame the screening process, blame me. That's okay. Because we're willing to stand behind all of the applicants that we place. And we actually have a 45-day, we call it the good fit guarantee, which basically is if we place somebody for a service business and then for whatever reason they leave, quit, are fired, disappear into dust and blow away, like for whatever reason, we replace them for free because we want to stand behind every applicant that we place because it's not just about getting someone to say, yes, I will work for you. It's about getting somebody who says yes, does what they say to do, and then sticks around. And that's the aim that we're looking for. That's the reason why recruiting is hard. Right? Recruiting is not complicated. From what we've talked about today, tell more people, weed very aggressively, hire very selectively. But the human element, the human variable, it makes it not 100% predictable.
Right.
And so that's why we stand behind all of the people and we try to eat as much risk as we possibly can to make sure that people we work with actually get people that are good fits for their culture and for the company that they're trying to build, not just the company they have today, but the company they're going to next year going forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Good. Well, that's such a relief to know that this investment that they're making, that 90% of it is done for them. And that even if that, things don't work out, it's backed up with, hey, what did you call it?
The good fit
The
guarantee.
good fit guarantee. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, Connor, you've given so much great information, for our listeners. And, if they're in a situation where they need to hire somebody, whether it's a technician, and you'll help them hire anybody from a technician to a office manager to a helper to, you know, operations manager, anything, right?
Correct. Yeah. Anything in the home service from office admin, dispatch, technicians, sales reps, operations managers,
Yeah.
pretty much every role in home service business. Yeah.
Okay. And because you've worked in those in industries that require those positions, and so you know a lot of what you're looking for. How would people get a hold of you so that they can use your service and offload some of that responsibility of hiring people onto you know away from themselves so that they can free up their time?
Yeah. You can go check out my website at homeservicehiring.com. Homeservicehiring.com. On there, I actually wrote a book. It's called The 10 Hiring Sins. I wrote it as a playbook initially just for my clients because I realized that some of them kept hitting the same roadblocks, and then I'd see some other clients hit the same roadblocks. And so I wrote a book outlining the 10 most common mistakes. So you can actually grab a free copy. You just have to pay shipping and I'll mail it to you for free.
Oh, cool.
Again,
Cool.
that's homeservicehiring.com, and then you can go see the link where it says free book.
Yeah, I actually have a few copies, and I can see one right behind your head there. If you turn, we'll get it on camera. Yeah, there you go. I'm sure that a lot of people can use your service, and the information you've given out has been fantastic. So, thank you so much for being a guest today. I wish you all the best. I will be talking to you. I'll be sending people your way, and thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care. One of the things that impressed me most about Connor is his level of awareness at such a young age. Connor spent years studying how service businesses actually work, not just marketing and not just hiring, but the connection between people, leadership, systems, reputation, and growth. And what I love most is that he doesn't make it complicated. So many people are looking for a secret, right? A lot of times we spend time looking for this magic interview question or the perfect personality profile or some hidden trick that nobody else knows that's going to work. But Connor keeps it really simple. He says it's all about volume. The right people are out there. The challenge is creating enough opportunities to find them. It's not flashy and it's not complicated. It just takes disciplined execution. And as I listen to him, I couldn't help but think about all the business owners that I meet who've reached that stage of complexity in their business. They're working harder than ever, but they know more of the same really isn't going to cut it anymore. And they need leadership beyond themselves, whether that's an office manager or an operations manager or an outside salesperson or maybe some completely different role that they haven't even identified yet. But they've reached the point where the business can no longer depend on, as Connor says, the genius with 1,000 hands. And if that's where you are, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Not a sales pitch, just a conversation. One of the things that I enjoy most is helping business owners figure out what the next stage of leadership looks like in their company. Sometimes the biggest challenge isn't finding the right person. It's identifying what that person looks like, who they need to be, before you go out and look for them. So if you're feeling that tension between where your business is today and where you want it to be tomorrow, go ahead and reach out. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes. Just click on it. It says, Let's Talk. You'll get a link to my calendar and you can pick a spot and we'll have a conversation. I'd love to help you think through what the next step is in keeping your company growing beyond you. All right. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Locally Owned. Until next time, keep building a business that's worth owning and a life that's worth living.